One approach to preventing heart attack and stroke in adulthood might be by focusing on children. Here's one reason why this could be a really good idea. In the United States, about 20% of 8 to 17-year-olds already have abnormal cholesterol. And in the November 8th issue of JACC, a look at adolescent dyslipidemia and standardized lifestyle modification, benchmarking real-world practice. To do this, I'm with Dr. Justin Zachariah, who is an MD and an MPH, and preventive cardiologist and assistant professor at Texas Children's Hospital in Baylor, and also the first pediatric cardiologist to train at the NHLBI's Framingham Heart Study. That's very impressive. This has obviously been something that has been of interest to you for some time. Where does the interest come from? What drives you to this field?
I think that getting at the roots of disease is attractive for any physician. We are very much interested not only in trimming the branches, if you will, but getting at the root so that it doesn't continue to happen over and over and over again. It really started in college and medical school when I talked to practicing physicians, especially adult physicians who often got frustrated with their practice because of their repeat business.
Yes, exactly.
And their frustration that they weren't really making the kind of impact that they wanted to make. And so it occurred to me that perhaps it's that old adage, the place to start is at the root, and to start with children and teach them the right way, and perhaps they'd continue.
Now, tell us about what you're presenting in this research letter in JACC.
Well, what we're trying to do is prevent long-term consequences of high cholesterol. And those consequences are wide and far-ranging, as we know more and more data is accumulating to that effect. And so what we're trying to do here is what we call primary prevention, which is addressing children and adolescents who already have demonstrated abnormal cholesterols early in life and trying to modify their path to cardiovascular disease and perhaps avert or delay the occurrence of those events.
So what did you do and what did you look at?
So what we did was first of all, create a standardized way that we as our practice group would approach these children. And we did that by dividing them into groups that were very much based on the cholesterol tests that everyone uses from internal medicine, family practice, and so on. And looking at those kids with abnormal triglyceride levels, abnormal HDL levels, and abnormal LDL levels, but further dividing those LDL levels into those most likely to be genetically mediated versus those more likely to be lifestyle mediated. Current guidelines suggest that all children, regardless of where they start, regardless of how they come about it, need to start with lifestyle modification first. And so we all agreed to standardize that.
So not drug therapy, obviously, so it's very important that you look at them and try and change their habits. Were you successful?
We had some moderate success in doing this with lifestyle alone. Now, that's not to say that some, especially the genetically elevated kids, those kids with predominantly familial hypercholesterolemia, right, those kids we could not get all the way down to normal with lifestyle alone. Sure, but up to 30 to 36% of the kids in the other categories, we were able to normalize. And virtually all of them had substantial modifications if they followed our program.
It is hard enough to get adults to pay attention to you. What did you do when you were dealing with kids?
First of all, we simplified the message. Number two, we focused on it as a medical problem that they could approach. And that's critical. A lot of these kids, unfortunately, have obesity as a comorbidity. Right. And they get, focused on from that perspective, both by their parents, by other physicians, by their peers. And what we did was took cardiometabolic prevention outside of that stew, which can sometimes be toxic, and say, hey, listen, here's a problem that we can attack together. Right. And when we did that, we built on that success. And that was the key that we all agreed on, was to focus on the success. Find something at that first and second visit that we could really catch on to and say, hey, listen, you're moving in the right direction. And that positivity became contagious. And I think that that's what we got the results that we did.
So how would somebody duplicate what you're doing?
Well, I think it's quite straightforward, actually. Leadership at our institution had the foresight to actually write this down. So this is all available in terms of what the recommendations are. They're very much guideline-based. and they're available.
Is this the Lipid Standardized Clinics Assessment and Management Plan?
Correct, the short form SCAMPS,
Which I
lipid
think is
SCAMPS.
great, yes. It was formed and formed the basis of what you were doing.
Correct.
That is great. As you said, some guidelines tell us to rely on lifestyle modifications rather than cholesterol-lowering therapy for these kids. So it's encouraging to see that the approach can work, and weight loss seems to be the key.
Weight loss appears to be an important predictor in certain one of these cholesterol subgroups. In others, the pure change in lifestyle seemed to make a difference in the lipids without making a substantial weight change. But again,
that's important. That's great.
And the important focus was that we didn't focus on their weight. Weight came along for the ride. We very much focused on the lipids.
That's very good. So this is in the November 8th issue of JACC. It is a research letter. Please check it out because a friend of mine years ago wrote a book on kids and cholesterol. And it was an issue back then, and it certainly continues to be today. For CardioSource World News and CardioSource World News Interventions, I'm Rick McGuire.